I was standing directly in front of the flashing press cameras at the grand groundbreaking ceremony for the multi-million-dollar Skyline Tower project, watching in absolute silence as my own family was led away in handcuffs. The elite crowd of investors, journalists, and even the city mayor stood frozen in total shock. For 7 brutal years, my family had locked me away in a run-down, freezing construction trailer, forcing me to pull 18-hour days fixing their structural blunders while my brother Ethan played the glamorous, wealthy face of the company. They pocketed the millions, drove luxury cars, and treated me like an embarrassing family secret. But last night, they crossed a line that compromised human lives. They forged my engineering signature on a dangerous, cheat set of blueprints that would have caused this entire tower to collapse. They thought I would stay quiet forever, but they didn't realize I was holding the one hard drive that would permanently dismantle their empire. Before I reveal the exact moment I hijacked my brother's live microphone and exposed their financial crimes to the entire city, I have a quick question for you. Where are you watching this video from right now? Let me know down in the comments. I love seeing where our community is tuning in from. Now, let's go back to the night my life turned into a 7-year nightmare. My name is Natalie. Long before I could even speak, my role in the Anderson family had already been decided. My father, Henry Anderson, was the charismatic face of Anderson Construction. To the public, he was a visionary tycoon with grand plans and a brilliant smile. Behind closed doors, he was a reckless gambler and a spendthrift who consistently pushed the firm to the absolute brink of bankruptcy. My mother, Victoria, was a cold, calculating socialite who valued country club appearances and luxury over the basic well-being of her children. And then there was my brother, Ethan, the undisputed golden child. Ethan possessed a silver tongue that could charm any wealthy investor, but he was profoundly lazy and completely incompetent when it came to the actual science of building. I was the misfit. At 28 years old, I was a dedicated structural engineer. I was fiercely passionate about mathematics and structural integrity, making sure the buildings people lived in were safe. I had earned a coveted spot at a top-tier engineering university, but my dreams were instantly shattered during my final year. I was sitting in a lecture hall when my mother called me, her voice trembling with synthetic panic. "Natalie, you have to pack your bags and come home right now," she demanded. "Your father's company is facing a massive crisis. The city inspectors are threatening to shut down our stadium project, and we need someone who can quietly fix the structural numbers without talking to the press." Trusting my family, I withdrew from my classes that very night and flew back to the city. I genuinely believed I was providing a short-term favor. I had no idea I was walking straight into a trap. When I arrived, the family business was in absolute shambles. My father was drinking heavily in his office, and Ethan was driving a brand new sports car funded by the company, rambling about branding and marketing when he couldn't even read a basic architectural blueprint. Instead of an office, my father banished me to a rusted, unheated trailer parked in the mud of our active construction site. "It's better this way, Natalie," he told me coldly. "If our high-end investors see a young woman running the engineering department, they will pull their funding immediately. You do the heavy lifting behind the scenes, and Ethan will present it to the world. He's the face, you're just the support." For 7 grueling years, that trailer was my cage. I woke up at 4 o'clock every morning, drank terrible coffee, and commanded tough union foremen who openly sneered at my authority. But I was brilliant at what I did. I quietly identified and resolved catastrophic safety violations before the inspectors arrived, aggressively renegotiated vendor contracts, and completely redrew the faulty structural designs my father casually scribbled on dinner napkins. One freezing winter, while managing a high-rise development downtown, the heater in my trailer completely broke. When I begged my father for a repair, he snapped that there was zero money in the budget, right before cutting a check for Ethan to buy a designer suit for a public relations press conference. I was left shivering in the dark, hand-drawing complex HVAC schematics because our engineering software license had expired. Ethan strolled into my trailer that afternoon, reeking of expensive cologne, and looked around the space with visible disgust. "Is it done yet?" he asked, completely indifferent to the fact that my hands were turning blue. "Almost," I replied, my voice shaking from the cold. "But the load calculations on the eastern retaining wall are entirely wrong." If we build this according to Father's current plan, the entire structural integrity will be compromised. Ethan aggressively snatched the blueprints right off my desk. Just hand it over. The investors are waiting at a luxury luncheon, he sneered, slamming the door behind him. I watched from the window as he climbed into his heated luxury car, completely leaving me behind to freeze. Yet, I kept working. I did it for the construction crews who relied on those paychecks, for the innocent people who would eventually occupy those spaces, and, foolishly, because I still hoped my family would one day love and validate me. The definitive turning point came with the Skyline Tower project. It was designed to be a revolutionary, green energy skyscraper, and it was entirely my conceptual design. I had sacrificed months of sleep perfecting it while Ethan was away lounging on tropical vacations. On the night of the project's launch party, I stood quietly in the corner of a luxurious penthouse, holding a glass of tap water and watching Ethan raise a champagne toast to a room full of high society executives. For a brief, naive second, I thought he might actually acknowledge my hard work. Instead, he smirked into the microphone and said, "And let's give a quick nod to my little sister, Natalie, who helped out with the paperwork. Hopefully, this project helps her finally land a real job." The room erupted into mocking laughter. My mother covered her mouth to hide her malicious smile, and my father simply shook his head at me as if I were a permanent disappointment. In that exact moment, the illusion was permanently shattered. I walked out of the penthouse, rejecting the elevator, and took the concrete stairs. With every single step downward, my agonizing pain hardened into an unshakable resolve. The next morning, my phone exploded with aggressive demands. Ethan wanted the final CAD data, and my mother was coldly ordering me to sign over the exclusive intellectual property rights. "It belongs to the family name, Natalie," she stated. "You are merely an employee." When I firmly refused, they retaliated by firing my entire hand-selected engineering crew, threatening to leave them all unemployed unless I surrendered the designs. That was their final mistake. I immediately logged into our secure corporate server and downloaded the entire digital paper trail. What I uncovered made me sick to my stomach. To save millions in material costs, my father and Ethan had substituted my safe designs with a rejected, highly dangerous early draft that utilized substandard steel. Even worse, they had already forged my professional engineering stamp and signature on the official city permit applications to push it through. I chose to fight back. I arranged a private meeting with Amelia Reed, the most formidable real estate developer in the city. Amelia was a brilliant, no-nonsense executive who had famously cut ties with my father years ago after he attempted to steal her intellectual property. I walked into her corporate office and placed an external hard drive on her desk. "My name is Natalie Anderson," I said directly, "and I am here to bring down Anderson Construction." Amelia studied me for a long moment. "I know exactly who you are, Natalie. Everyone in the industry knows you're the true mastermind running that entire circus." As I walked her through the compromised data, her expression turned entirely rigid. "This isn't just corporate fraud, Natalie. If they build this tower with these substandard materials, the building will literally collapse in high winds. People will die." Amelia immediately offered me a senior partnership at her firm, complete with a 5% equity stake and an absolute guarantee that my name would be explicitly stamped on every single skyscraper I ever designed. I accepted on the spot. But I wasn't going to let my family simply walk away from their crimes. Over the next few days, I closely monitored the City of Chicago's Department of Buildings public portal. On the night the permit was officially approved using the forged documents, Amelia and I immediately contacted Inspector Ryan, the director of the Structural Safety Board. We spent 48 hours straight creating a precise digital twin simulation of the forged plans, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that the building was a catastrophic hazard. That brings us back to the morning of the groundbreaking ceremony. The site was packed with high-profile investors, news cameras, and political figures. Ethan was standing confidently at the podium, delivering a speech about sustainability and corporate safety. I marched straight onto the active site alongside Amelia and Inspector Ryan. The crowd fell into a hushed silence as I walked directly up to the stage, stepped in front of Ethan, and took control of the microphone. "My name is Natalie Anderson," my voice echoed powerfully across the loudspeakers. "And I am the licensed structural engineer for this project. The building permits submitted by Anderson Construction are completely forged. The executives standing behind me have deliberately chosen to use substandard materials to line their own pockets. If this skyscraper is built as planned, it is structurally guaranteed to collapse within 5 years. Ethan completely lost control, screaming at the top of his lungs that I was a lying, disgruntled employee. I calmly held up the forensic hard drive. Amelia Reed stepped forward, confirming the data to the press, while Inspector Ryan, flanked by uniformed police officers, stepped onto the stage. Henry Anderson, Ethan Anderson, and Victoria Anderson, the inspector announced clearly into the media microphones. You are officially under arrest for corporate fraud, forgery, and reckless endangerment. The color completely vanished from Ethan's face, and my mother began shrieking in public humiliation as the handcuffs clicked into place around their wrists. Watching them being escorted into the back of the police cruisers, I felt a massive, beautiful wave of absolute freedom. I had finally stood up for myself, vindicated my team, and saved hundreds of lives. The fallout was absolute. Anderson Construction was completely dissolved. My father permanently lost his licensing, my mother's social status was utterly destroyed, and Ethan was sentenced to 4 years in a federal penitentiary. My mother tried to call me months later from a burner phone, but I blocked the number without listening. I no longer required their shallow apologies or their toxic validation. Today, I sit in a gorgeous corner office at Reed and Anderson Architects. I look out the glass window and watch our cranes rising into the Chicago skyline, constructing buildings rooted in honesty, safety, and absolute integrity. I pick up my official notary stamp, reading Natalie Anderson, managing partner, and press it firmly down onto our newest project blueprints. I am no longer the hidden workhorse in the mud. I am finally the master of my own destiny, and I am just getting started.